Okay. So now I will dive slowly into this diagram with you. And first thing we have to know for the cervical plexus is it mainly comes out of, um, I think, yes, the anterior rami of C1 to C5. Anterior, so cervical, just give me a second. Plexus, anterior rami, C1 to C5. So that I'm right. Yes. So cervical plexus, it originates. What's a plexus? It's basically a hard connection of nerves. There's like a concentration of nerves in this region. Um, Cervical is in the cervical region, which is the neck. And also when you hear cervical, like cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae. No, we're at the cervical. So cervical, we know that um, the the spinal cord, it runs through the the vertebral foramen, right? Let me just yes, through the vertebral foramina, and through the vertebral foramina, it it gives out um like branches towards the right and the left through the intervertebral foramen. Okay, and imagine now you're at C1 station. Okay, um, in your spinal cord, and you have a posterior rami and an anterior rami. And the anterior ramis, now
C4.
I will get them out right there. These are anterior ramis, okay? So the second thing that we have to know is that cervical plexus comes out from C1 to C5 from the anterior ramis. And from the anterior ramis now, we will create this complex cervical plexus that helps us innervate or control or involuntary control some muscles, some, well, mainly muscles, but we have some little structures here and there, but you will see what I'm talking about. So, first point, C1, C5 anterior rami. Second point, um, first point, C1, C5. Second point, anterior rami. Next,
Ribs.
we will go and start drawing ends. Look here. Um, we will say from C1, a nerve travels across with the hypoglossal nerve to innervate two muscles, geniohyoid, thyrohyoid. So when you talk about geniohyoid or thyrohyoid and you're trying to tell Sariski, hmm, geniohyoid and thyrohyoid are innervated by the nerve is C1 of the cervical plexus. That's what you say. So far, so clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so this drawing that you see in front of me, it will become a little bit more complicated, but I need you to study it step by step and practice drawing it after you study it with me to have it in your brain. Okay, so the first step, C1, you draw it this way, and then it splits into genohyoid and thyroid. From C1, there's this something that comes out too. This is called superior root, and this whole loop, it will also have an inferior root, is called ansa cervicalis, and I'll show you. Do you see here? Ansa cervicalis. I don't want to confuse you. I'm going to take this back. See? Ansa cervicalis. So ansa cervicalis is basically a loop of nerves that comes out from the combination of C1 superior root and both C2 and C3 join together to form the inferior root. This one is the superior root, and these two join together to form an inferior root. What's the function of the ansa cervicalis? The function of the ansa cervicalis is to innervate the infrahyoid muscles, such as superior thyroid. Well, not all of them because thyroid is here, but most of them. So superior belly of omohyoid, sternothyroid, sternohyoid, inferior belly of omohyoid. Okay. And if I go forward a little bit, your belly of a moth. And you can see I've completed the diagram. So C1 gives off genuhyoid and thyrohyoid. Okay, and genuhyoid is a suprahyoid muscle. Thyrohyoid is an infrahyoid muscle. C1 supplies those two. Now we talked about ansa cervicalis. Ansa cervicalis is part of the cervical plexus and is made up of, see here, superior root of ansa cervicalis, and this one, inferior root of ansa cervicalis. Inferior root of ansa cervicalis, if you go back to its roots, it comes out of C3 and C2. Now, what are the things that we're required to know that are innervated by ansa cervicalis? Ansa cervicalis innervates the omohyoid, superior belly and inferior belly, just the same muscle. Sternothyroid, sternohyoid. Okay. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
just give me a second. C3 and C4. Now, we went in, after we have done, we're going to go down to C3 and C4. C3, C4, so let's follow C3 first. C4, they join together somehow to innervate something called supraclavicular muscle. Okay? And C3, C4, C5, they join and give us the phrenic nerve. Okay? Phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm. So far, so good. Any questions?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Now, it will become a little bit more hard, but watch. Now, so far your drawing should be just these individuals, but then there's bridges between the anterior rami. There's a bridge first between C1 and C2. Okay? And this bridge, communicating branch, it will first give a couple of branches. The first one is a communicating branch to vagus. Deal? So how do we narrate this? From the communicating branch between C1 and C2 anterior rami comes out the communicating branch to vagus. Next, watch. From the communicating branch of C1 and C2, more branches come out. One that supplies rectus capitis anterior, one that supplies rectus capitis lateralis, one that supplies longus capitis. Okay? All right. Next, we now go to C2 anterior rami. Watch. C1, C2 communicating bridge gives off four branches. One, two, three, four. We're not coming out of here. We're coming out of here. Okay? But when we talk about this one, first thing that we have to know is that it gives off branches from its main anterior rami. So C2 anterior rami gives longus capitis, longus coli, lesser occipital. Now we go again to the communicating branch between C2 and C3, two comes out. Greater auricular and transverse cervical. Okay. Next, we go to C3. From the main anterior rami of C3, again, longus capitis, longus coli, levator scapulae, the scalenes are innervated. Three of them. First three from C3, and then this little one, C4, the scalenes. Okay.
Yeah.
And then from the anterior rami of C4 comes out again longus capitis, longus coli.
Wait, but I have a question.
Yep.
So on the right side are the muscles, and on the left side is more are
They're all muscles.
muscles.
They're all muscles.
But like, how do I give him a speech? Like, do
Yes,
I
I'll
start?
tell you. I'll tell you now. Is it clear so far?
Yeah, yeah. The drawing is clear.
So now let's dive into how we can speech this. And listen to me, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Sersky, this is a cervical plexus, and I'm going to narrate my answer to you. The cervical plexus is a plexus that has its roots C1, C2, C3, C4, and partially C5. From the root C1, a nerve comes out to innervate genuhyoid and thyrohyoid, which is very close in relation along the course of the hypoglossal nerve. C1 and C1, C2, and C3 give rise to something called the ansa cervicalis. C1 gives rise to the superior root alone. C2 and C3 combine together to form the inferior root of the ansa cervicalis. The ansa cervicalis is responsible for innervating the superior belly of omohyoid, the inferior belly of the omohyoid, sternothyroid, and sternohyoid. From the communicating branch, I'm here now. From the communicating branch that is found between C1 and C2, there are four branches that arise. Communicating branch to vagus, rectus captus anterior, rectus captus lateral, longus captus. From the communicating branch between C2 and C3, transverse cervical and greater auricular. From the anterior rami of C2, longus captus, longus coli, lesser occipital. C3 and C4 combine together to innervate the supraclavicle. C3, C4, and C5 combine together to give the phrenic nerve that innervates the diaphragm. From the anterior rami of C3 alone gives us the longus capitis and the longus coli. From C3 and C4 both innervate levator scapulae and scalene. C4 also alone innervates longus capitis and longus coli. That's it.
Okay, makes sense.
So you have to first of all train on how you can draw it so that your brain has a very strong mental image. And then that mental image, you can go across the mental image, walking across it, and actually filling in the muscle names. And that's how I memorize it personally.
Do you have something similar for brachial plexus as well?
Yes, 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 yes. The brachial plexus is kind of cool too. Um, and I can go over it right now, actually. Let me see. Um, yeah, we can go over it. Um, but I'll leave the bracket plexus for another day because it's like I don't want to bump you so much with so much shit. So let's leave it at the cervical plexus today. And tomorrow, if you're gonna I don't know when next you would have a class with me, but whenever you want, the next time we study, we're gonna do the first thing is the brachial plexus. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so now we've finished 3 points. First one was the salivary glands. Second
Yeah.
was the soft plate. Third is
Mm.
the cervical plexus. And make sure you just memorize what I give you, and you'll be more than enough. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Um, let's see. Okay, let's do the facial artery. The facial artery, facial artery. The facial artery. Give me a second.